Well, already this morning, they changed the legal basis of the existing sanctions against Belarus to go beyond the existing sanctions, which target Belarus for the fraudulent election and for the crackdown on protests against that fraudulent election. Now, the scope has been expanded so that they can target companies or individuals involved in this human trafficking. What we're waiting to see this afternoon is who exactly they're going to target. The big question is whether they will target third country entities, airlines that are accused of being involved in the human trafficking, or at least turning a blind eye to it. That includes Turkish Airlines, Russia's Aeroflot, airlines from the UAE. Now, over the past couple of days, the European Commission says it has struck voluntary agreements with those countries and those airlines to stop one-way flights to Belarus from countries like Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. And so this will be a test today to see whether the national governments of the EU trust that voluntary deal that the Commission has come up with. It could be that they say, okay, that's great that you're going to voluntarily do that. Just in case, we're going to have these sanctions ready in case those one-way flights do continue for those Middle Eastern migrants. So the key thing here, though, to know is that it appears from when the foreign ministers went in that it is certain that Belavia, the Belarusian airline, will be targeted, as will suppliers to Belavia. So there's a number of Irish companies that supply parts to Belavia. If they continue to do so after these sanctions are adopted today, and it is expected that they will be, then they would be subject to sanctions.
How likely is it, Dave, that these sanctions will change the behaviour of the Belarusian leader, Lukashenko?
Well, there are some early signs that the Belarusian government may be backing down here. This morning, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said that they are arranging for flights to bring the migrants back. That was an awkward climb down for him because, of course, his government is accused of arranging the flights to bring them there in the first place. But he did point out that these people don't exactly want to go back. Of course, they wouldn't have made this perilous journey if things weren't very bad where they come from. But it appears that this climb down may be trying to get the EU not to go the full route here with sanctions today. Also, it looks like a phone call from Vladimir Putin over the weekend may have changed the Belarusian government's positioning here. A couple days ago, Lukashenko had threatened to cut off gas supplies to Europe as a further escalation of this kind of hybrid attack, and Vladimir Putin said, "Don't you dare." So those two things may have combined to start a Belarusian climb down. But of course, even if they're saying they're going to have these repatriation flights, it doesn't mean that people will actually get on them, and that the crisis still remains. The crisis that the EU says has been created by the Belarusian government, who flew these people over, brought them to the Poland border. Now, where are they going to go? How are they going to be convinced to go back to the countries that they came from? That is now a headache for the Belarusian government, which I think may be questioning their strategy here. I think that Lukashenko may have thought that he could actually get the EU to undo the existing sanctions for the election and the protests, but the opposite has happened. The EU is expanding the sanctions. Lukashenko may have looked at Turkey, the incident that happened a couple years ago where Turkey was letting migrants cross into the EU's border, and the EU actually paid Turkey to stop that, to keep the migrants in Turkey. A lot of people criticize that deal as the EU giving into blackmail by Turkey, and Lukashenko may have said, hey, maybe they'll do the same thing here. The difference is Turkey wasn't purposefully bringing the migrants to the border. The migrants were going there anyway. The situation with Belarus, that was not a major trafficking route before this, and so it's really just, it was an egregious thing for the Belarusian government to do. It crosses all kinds of lines, and I think there was never any possibility that the EU was going to back down on the existing sanctions because of this. That being said, Lukashenko may have been able to demonstrate here that he has some power over the EU on its eastern border, that he can make life very difficult for the EU at that eastern border, and that may have been enough to make the EU think twice about acting against Belarus in the coming years. At least that may be his thinking at this point.
Dave Keating, live for us there in Brussels. Thanks very much indeed. We'll have much more for you this hour on that situation on the border. We'll be talking specifically about